So 1 year ago, on August the 1st, 2018, thousands of women and gender non-conforming people took to the streets of South Africa under the banner of the Total Shutdown. They were raising their voices about the high rates of gender-based violence women and NGNC people were facing in South Africa. In Pretoria, TTS marched to the union buildings, handing over a list of demands to the president. The organisation has been holding a 1-year commemoration of events around the country. Lesley Ncube, spokesperson of Total Shutdown, Intersectional Women's Movement, joins us now on Skype. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us. So let's first start with your anniversaries. What events have you held thus far?
There are various events that took place in Cape Town. The Cape Town chapter had a ribbon ceremony where they placed ribbons at Parliament representing the women that have died. So if you go right now to Parliament, there are hundreds of ribbons in red. And in Tata, there was a march and demands were handed over at the police station, and the similar demands that we handed over last year. And then in Port Elizabeth, they're having commemoration funerals at various police stations to symbolize the women that have been killed and women that have died at the hands of men whilst having protection orders.
I mean, I noticed that you've called it also We March But campaign. Is there a significance to this hashtag?
Yes, because when we did the National the Summit, we asked for 5 key asks, and part of those asks haven't been met yet. And the key asks, one of them is the 365-day campaign in the fight against gender-based violence and awareness campaign. And the second one was that we needed a full-blown training of police officers and all authorities to sensitize them and teach them about patriarchy and women's rights. So we're saying that we must, but these 2 key demands haven't been met out of the 5, and the decriminalization of sex work. And at the broader aspect, our 24 demands, they're demands that still haven't been met.
So as you said, 5 key demands of 24 total demands, but you did say that 4 of some of your demands were met. Just take us through them.
So as I've stated before, we had our National Gender Summit that was convened by the president in November, the 1st to 2nd November. So that was one of the demands that was met. And then after the summit, an interim steering committee was set up as one of the deliverables for summit. And then a model structure for the Gender-Based Violence and Femicide Council will be finalized in September 2019. The drafting of and consultations on the National Strategic Plan to eradicate gender-based violence will be finalized at the end of September 2019. And the NSP will be costed for women, children, and gender non-conforming people. And then another thing, earlier this year, we did sign a summit declaration between government and civil society representatives. So as we said, there is progress with the demands that have been met so far. So we are finding solutions, but however, we still have a long way to go in ensuring that all our 24 demands are met.
So let's talk about that. As you mentioned, the fact that the president did declare gender-based violence a crisis. But what was then the follow-on of that? So there were discussions that you put on the table to say we need better training of police officers. You spoke about femicide and how you believe as a policy directive it needs to be approached. What is the step-by-step expectation that you had following that summit, which would have obviously been a coup for you because it was one of your major demands, that you demanded the president hold the summit. He did do that, but then what were the steps that you had hoped would follow, and was there a time frame?
Well, with our demands, there were time frames. There were some demands that still haven't been met, that were supposed to be met last year, soon after the summit, which includes the 365-day media campaign in the fight against gender-based violence.
Yes,
and we were actually, yes.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is, did you outline for government that, okay, so these are the steps we want you to take towards these goals? Beyond saying a campaign of 365 days recognizing gender-based violence?
As I said, the demands is a plan for the government on what steps to take to eradicate gender-based violence. And the only issue that we're facing right now is that there's a lot of processes and procedures that need to be followed. And one of the biggest issues is funding. Like, we need to ensure that there is a set amount allocated in the budget in the fight against gender-based violence, but then we realize that these are things that need to be legislated, because once it's legislated, it can be costed. So all these nitty-gritties with procedures and processes is what's really taking some time that we thought that should be easy and, you know, a breeze through.
Lesley, and I recognize that, and I appreciate what you're saying as well, which is what I wondered when you spoke about the fact of decriminalizing sex work. That's a conversation that's been on the table for years, and that has been the recognition that there needs to be some legislative interventions, laws need to be changed, and there also needs to be a broader discussion of what does it mean to decriminalize sex work and who would qualify as that. So going forward, have you set up other platforms where you can then take this further? So your plan is on the table, the implementation thereof, how does that occur?
Okay, so currently the National Strategic Plan is hosting different workshops across the country. As I said, there are consultations that are going on so that we can figure out on how best we can implement it, because a lot of it we have to consult with civil society and the rest of the community of what else we can add on to implement the national plan.
So far, what is coming out of those consultations?
A lot of it has to do with the way in which the government deals with people from the LGBTQI community, specifically with trans women, where there's an issue of a waiting list of about 15 plus years when they want to have their gender affirming surgeries, and furthermore, them having to get hormones for their treatment, you know, so various things affecting the LGBTQI plus community, various issues that come up when dealing with cases. So it's repetitive issues that we've already addressed in the 24 demands.
And the institutions to help carry out some of these demands, I'd imagine quite a number of them are inadequate for the mere fact that we are where we are, that some of these conversations are only being recognized now when we speak about people who identify as women or non-conformist gender stereotypes that we're speaking about.
Yes, I mean, it's a huge issue, because even right now in some prisons, trans women are not seen or identified as women, so they're taken to male prisons. So what is the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services doing to ensure that trans women are taken to women prisons and are actually taken care of and ensuring that they do get their hormones, you know? So these are some of the issues that we're dealing with. And another issue that we're facing is that the trauma treatment centers and the Tutuzela care centers, they're not 24-hour centers. So when victims and survivors come to us or report to such issues at midnight or 1 a.m., we have to wait until 8 a.m. Now, imagine sitting with your trauma until the next morning to be treated. It's re-traumatizing, and it's a long and unnecessary process that needs to be dealt with.
All right, thank you so much for speaking to us. Lesley Ncube is spokesperson of #Total Shutdown, Intersectional Women's Movement.